Very good. Thank you. Mr. Rollins.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the regional centers are deeply committed to this. We look forward and work hard to provide services to everyone in our system. We work very closely with DRC and have meetings on a regular basis to discuss this issue. I think you point out a very good point. It's no excuse, but we are definitely in tough times trying to meet all the requirements that the legislature and the administration has put on regional centers, at the same time reducing funding to do those responsibilities. We are committed to making this happen. We think we're making great progress, and look forward to continuing working with DRC and others to make sure that this is completed in a proper and timely manner.
Thank you. Let's go to public comment after 3.5 hours. I don't know if there'll be anyone who wants to speak, but just in case, let us go to public comment. 1 minute each, please. But remember, you don't have to use the whole minute. Yes. We welcome your public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sue North with CDSA. Just two quick little points about back in the day when all the big cuts were taken. There were about 35 different things done in one budget year in trailer bill language, and a couple of those items which we've not really talked about today. We talked about the audits and many other things, but there's language that deals with least costly provider, which basically is code for you're offered the cheapest thing and that's what you're going to get in an IPP process. Also, in the old days of how things used to work in the regional center IPP process, families were given essentially catalogs of services and vendors, and they were encouraged to go look and see what they wanted. What they thought would make the best fit for their child. And again, in the budget ratcheting back motions, the budget trailer bill language basically, coupled with the least costly provider, meant that oftentimes, just exactly what Evelyn's talking about, originally some of that came out of our budget cuts because families were not offered information, so they don't know what to ask for. And the linguistic issue is also true, but there have been many things done in this system to tighten it down that we now need to understand better what the negative consequences have been.
Could you make your final comments, please? Thank you.
David Mulvey, SEIU Developmental Disabilities Council. I wanted to speak just briefly with respect to the governor's proposals around addressing the increase in minimum wage and the increase in health care costs, and the fact that that money is going to be targeted only to providers who can essentially prove that they will be paying below minimum wage or that they were not currently offering the required health care benefits. And that stands as a disincentive to those providers who have really done an excellent job in our community, either through fundraising or lowering their administrative costs or however they manage to pull it off to pay better than minimum wage and to pay health care benefits to their employees, as they will receive nothing in the way of a rate increase that will allow them to continue to do that. And so they are going to be forced into competing against the McDonald's workers of the world rather than being able to pay a reasonable wage for their providers. And we much prefer a solution that...
Could I ask you to make your final comments, please? Thank you.
Will Stanford Futures Explored. Just a real quick comment on Shannon's Mountain. I happened to see all the DCs when I was on the DC task force, and Harbor Village was a great place to go and visit. Oh, I also know that CMS has come out with a whole new set of regulations, including the one that says you can't have an integrated setting on a DC property. So Shannon's Mountain, I don't know, and Jim Knight would probably be better to answer this, may not actually qualify to be a great integrated housing. Harbor Village may not because it borders a developmental center. So we can fund it now and get funding for it, but why invest in that? It argues to closing Fairview sooner, so it was no longer a DC when Shannon's Mountain was actually a integrated facility.
Thank you.
All right, Tony. Glad to be last in line, although I'll try not to take too much of your time. Somebody, I think it was Mr. Rollins, my friend from ARCA, who mentioned something about early start and children. You know, during the last issue, if you recall, we had a 10-year-old young man up here who used to get services from the regional center, but that no longer doesn't. So we need to get him back into the system. It's Rick Hodgkins again. Second, with regards to our regional, I don't know if this is in the Lannerman Act or if this is something that our regional center alone developed, but we have a committee for every service that the regional center provides or doesn't provide, even a work committee. And that has to go away, because a lot of the, unlike a lot of the service coordinators, Mr. Thurman, you have an LCSW or an MSW. Sadly, a lot of the service coordinators just have a bachelor's in human services, and therefore don't always have that bedside manner and kind of, you know, I've been on a rocky relationship with my service coordinator for the past 9 years, and luckily it's gotten better, all because of this, you know, budget cycle, and yeah, I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the public comment and to our speakers. We have one final issue, and that is from the Department of Rehabilitation, regarding the Department of Rehabilitation. While Mr. Xavier and others come forward, a question from Member Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before the developmental services people leave, on Shannon's Mountain, didn't the DGS determine, like in 2011 or 12, that they didn't have the statutory authority to even proceed with the project? So I'm just curious in 14 why we're still hopefully not spending money, but trying to figure out what to do with it. I just remember in a hearing one time they said that.
No, you're correct.
Oh, that is right. Okay.
It wasn't 2011 that they determined there was problems with the statutory authority. It was a little later.
Oh, okay.
But it is part of the reason that the project has been delayed, because of the issues that have to be addressed through statute.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, panel. We're looking forward to your testimony. Are we starting with Joe Xavier from the California Department of Rehabilitation?
Chairman and members of the committee, thank you. The opportunity to be here and share information about our department and talk about the budget item that is before the committee. Let me introduce myself, Joe Xavier, Director of the Department of Rehabilitation. I'm an individual with a disability, 14 years of private business ownership, 16 years in civil service, and over 30 years of working with our communities, stakeholders, and partners in advancing the services and programs of the Department of Rehabilitation. We provided the committee with a handout that I will, in the interest of time, touch on briefly, but leave with you for referring and for further conversation. Let me introduce Ginny Lee, our Chief Deputy Director, and Teresa Corielli, who's our Deputy over Administrative Services. The Department of Rehabilitation's mission is employment, independence, and equality for all Californians with disabilities. We work with our stakeholders, our communities, and partners in providing the services that lead to the employment and independence and equality. Our vocational rehabilitation program has provided the authority within the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that was enacted this past July. We have the Rehabilitation Services Administration provides the federal oversight for our vocational rehabilitation program within the Education Department, and within the Health and Human Services Federal Department, the Agency on Community Living provides the oversight for our Independent Living Services program. We are the largest vocational rehabilitation program in the nation. We serve over 100,000 individuals with disabilities in California annually. We have a budget of approximately $435 million, about 860 positions. 90% of the dollars that we receive come under our Title I, our vocational rehabilitation program. We have 14 districts, 13 regions throughout the state, 35 or 85 branch offices and about 1,300 staff that provide direct services to our consumers. Because we don't have enough resources to serve the demand, we have been in order of selection since the mid-90s, and essentially it requires we provide services to the most significantly disabled first, and to the significantly disabled second. We've been providing that since the mid-90s. Since 2011, we have opened up the waiting list to serve the individuals with disabilities who've been on that waiting list. We have independent living centers that serve about 22,000 individuals annually. They allow the individuals to continue to live independently in the community and to ensure that they have the opportunity to do so. There are 28 not-for-profit agencies that cover the entire state. Their funding is 100% federal funding, including the Social Security Reimbursement Dollars program income that we'll be speaking of today. The Older Individuals Who Are Blind program also provide independent living services in the community. They provide specialized services to individuals who are blind and visually impaired over the age of 55. They serve in 57 counties and serve about 7,000 individuals annually. What's important to remember about both the independent living community centers as well as the Older Individuals Blind program is that both of those are local assistance, and we provide the funding at the local level for the services to be delivered through our partners. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the Promise program, which we're very proud of here in California. We received $50 million of 100% federal funds a couple of years ago, and the Department of Rehabilitation is the lead department, partnering with our Employment Development Department, Health Care Services, Social Services, Developmental Services, and the Department of Education, as well as 4 federal partners. What we're doing is providing an intervention study for youth who are on supplemental security income between the ages of 14 and 16 to move them into either training and or education that leads into employment. In our first year, we have enrolled 1,000 of the 3,000 students that are targeted. We have stood up 22 contracts with over 300 school districts. We have the schools have hired 65 services coordinators that have been certified by the Cornell University. It's important to acknowledge that both the federal and state level saw the need and took action to provide interventions to make a greater difference in this very population that we're speaking of. I have set a goal for our department of reaching 20,000 annual competitive placements of individuals with disabilities into employment at an average of $20 an hour by the year 2020. This speaks to both quality, quantity, and time. With the committee's permission, I can move into the BCP or take any questions.
Thank you, Director Xavier. Anything from your staff? Anything else?
That's it. On the overview of the department, that's it. We prepare to speak of the BCP itself.
Could you take just 1 or 2 minutes to do the overview, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the committee and public comment.
Thank you. What we're asking for in the budget change proposal is 31 positions and $3.1 million of all federal authority to provide services to individuals who are on supplemental security income. It's important to note that among the population of individuals with disabilities of working age, the unemployment rate remains persistently at 70%. Half of 1% of the individuals that go on to SSI ever leave the SSI rolls. As an individual with a disability, I had the opportunity and benefited greatly from being on SSI that allowed me to transition into gainful employment. The State Rehabilitation Council is mandated by statute to advise the department on our programs and services and has been working with us for quite some time to improve the planning services for this population. Our schools are very supportive of providing the interventions to this population to ensure that they actually leave SSI and go to work. We really need to have a change here to change the 0.5% to something much greater and to break down the unemployment rate. And this is one such effort at doing something very different to ensure that we have a greater impact, much as the Promise is taking that focus on, the Promise Grant. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act provides an increased emphasis for individuals with disabilities to go into employment, competitive employment. The incentives planning is not new to the vocational rehabilitation. It's been traditionally provided for some time, but it has become increasingly complex, and we've reached a point where we need to provide a focused conversation for the individuals that we're serving to ensure that they actually transition into employment. Integrating this conversation into the vocational caseload ensures that that individual is much more likely to go to work. And it's a conversation that's focused on going to work and leaving poverty. If you're on SSI, you're going to live in poverty. Our pilot experience that we used, using our temporary blanket help to test this out, 10% more went to work, and we doubled the amount of individuals of this population who went to work at above the substantial gainful activity. What's important about that is that that's what returns the program income to California. We have 1.7 million individuals in California that are on SSI. Our caseload alone is over 40,000 individuals. We understand that there are some concerns in the community, and I'd like to briefly speak to those. Our independent living centers are valued partners, long-standing valued partners, and we'll continue to look to improve our partnerships and find ways to advance the services. And while we hear that there's some concerns around the funding, these two issues, although they are funded by the same funding stream, are not linked. The $3.1 million does not exist without this proposal, and it's not available to fund independent living services unless we can increase that revenue.
Mr. We've noted that the concern that you've shared, the staff has recommended that we hold this item open, which we will do. And we'll look forward to the ongoing conversation about it. And I just want to applaud you for the goal that you set. I believe you said at 20,000 individuals. I want to applaud you for that important goal and let you know that this committee looks forward to working with you closely on ensuring the opportunity for great work opportunities for those that we serve.
Thank you.
I'd like to give the members of the committee a chance to ask questions and then to see if there's any members from the public who'd like to speak. Thank you, Director Xavier. Ms. Chu, any questions? There's no questions from the committee at this time. Any public comment? Do we have any public comment? We do have a few speakers. 1 minute each, please.
Sorry about this, Mr. Thurman. I come before you again.
No apologies needed.
Rick Hodgkins. One thing I wanted to point out, and this is what the state of Vermont did, and if I known that this was going to be on today's agenda, I would have brought something to hand out to you as well as to the department representatives about what the state of Vermont has done to get rid of. They actually outlawed in Vermont the use of Section 14C certificates, which allow entities to pay the disabled less than the minimum wage. What's the point of going to work if you're going to get paid less than the minimum wage and you can't spend that money because you have to save that money because your SSI is going to be cut? I mean, I not only want to be able to, pay my bills and live and get clothes, but I also want to be able to have fun. And sheltered workshops are like a generic resource. It's like, and this is what I should have said on the previous issue, some generic resources are like high fructose corn syrup. Just because they're cheap doesn't mean they're good for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Vivuzzi. I'm the Executive Director of the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, representing 21 out of the 28 centers in California. We, too, applaud the department, our collaborative partner in independent living services, in their goal and in their effort to create an increased opportunity for employment for people with disabilities. Our concern is that this proposal may put at risk funding for independent living centers. We think there's a great value in this approach, and we're going to be so bold as to suggest that the governor's budget support this with a $3 million general fund investment rather than the federal dollars that are based on reimbursements. And we'd like to work with the department to look at the differences between what we think might happen to the funds and what they think is going to happen to the funds, and we have a meeting set with the department next week, so we would appreciate it if you would keep this open.
Thank you. And the committee is keeping this open. Director Xavier, if you could keep it to 60 seconds, I'll allow you to have the last word on this on behalf of the department.
Certainly, thank you. What I would point is that this is really important to keep in mind, that this is about more individuals with disabilities going to work. It's about more individuals leaving the roles of SSI, becoming taxpayers, contributing members of the community, and there's no cost to the state with the proposal that we brought forward, and we ask your support on.
Thank you. Obviously, this is something that will be an ongoing conversation. We are leaving the item open. There'll be the opportunity for the department to talk more about why it believes that this allocation should be made, and certainly an opportunity for the public and the partner agencies to also say why they believe that this is not the best allocation for those dollars. We look forward to the rigorous discussion. I want to thank everyone who's participated today, the members of the committee, all the presenters, all of our staff, the public for your public comment, Mr. McGraw for keeping us on time, and for everyone who's participated. This meeting is adjourned.